1 year ago, I completed my second game jam and submitted it to Brackeys Jam 2024.1. I created a platformer about a panda going on a jumping adventure through the forest to find what's behind the Great Door.
One eternity later.
For Brackeys Jam 2025.1 this year, I decided to make a sequel to the game so I could see if I've made progress in my game development skills over the last year. I've actually been learning to make games for like a year and a half now, but that's not as catchy as the title. So this is 1 year of progress on me trying to make the same-ish game. Now that the game is complete and the Game Jam ratings have been released, I thought it'd be fun to compare the two games and give them each letter grades on stuff like art, game design, and mechanics to see my progress over the last year. So let's get to grading. The art style for the original Pandemonium game is pretty basic. I'd been learning pixel art for around 3 months when I created this game, so it's not shocking that the art isn't perfect. The character sprite is pretty cute, but it's lacking a lot of animations. It's missing a full set of jumping and landing animations and a ladder climbing animation. I do like the animations that are there though. The walk animation is a simple 3-frame walk cycle, similar to what the classic Mega Man games did, and I think the death animation I made is pretty funny, with the gravestone and spirit rising up. The tile set looks pretty good, but that's mainly because I followed an Adam C. Eunice tutorial on making a grassy tile set. The background is a real lowlight of the game. There's no parallax effect, and it's just a flat blue background, with some white clouds thrown around. Overall, I'd give the art in the original game a C-. I think I did a lot better job with the art in the Pandemonium sequel. The character sprite is a bit less basic, and I added a cute bandana to make the panda a bit more visually interesting. The character has a full set of animations for all its jumping, running, and rolling around, which ended up being around 40 frames of animation for everything, compared to the 16 frames from the original game. I also added a cool rainbow dash effect that trails behind the character as it dashes, and I think it looks really cool and adds some juice to the game. The game has a nice parallax background that provides some atmosphere to the game, and it's a lot more visually interesting than the static background from the original game. In terms of enemy design, I don't think I really did that much better of a job than I did in the original game. One of the sprites is even just the same sprite from the original game, because I was running out of time to make a sprite for the second enemy. I did add an effect where the enemy sprite goes tumbling off screen when you kill it, which I think looks pretty cool. I'm not sure if the tile map really looks better than the one in the original game, but I did make it myself instead of following a YouTube tutorial, and there are 2 different tile sets in the game, so that adds some variety to what you're looking at. Overall, I think the art looks quite a bit better in the sequel, and I'd give it a grade of either B or maybe B+, because I like the dash effect a lot. Next up, let's take a look at how the mechanics of the 2 games compare to each other. For the original game, the character has basic running and jumping, as well as a double jump and dash that are unlocked. You can also attack enemies and pogo off of them with a down attack. The pogo is pretty hard to pull off though, because I just did a 1-frame shape cast, so it's pretty easy to miss an enemy, which is frustrating for players. The movement overall in this game feels pretty stiff. There's no acceleration for the movement, so it feels a bit jank, and the dash is super fast, which is pretty jarring. Overall, the mechanics are pretty bare bones and not super well implemented in the original game, and I'd give it a D grade. For the sequel, I decided to remove all the attacking and pogo stuff in favor of more classic platforming mechanics. The character can run and jump as well as roll and dash. The combination of the roll and dash led to some pretty satisfying and fun movement in the game. The roll is heavily inspired by Donkey Kong, so you can jump while rolling, and it has a fairly forgiving coyote time amount, so it's fun to roll off edges, then jump and dash through some spikes. I think the dash is a lot better implemented in this game. I added a slight pause and some screen shake when the character dashes, and I think it makes it a lot more satisfying to use compared to the original. I also added Donkey Kong barrels to shoot the player around. Can you tell I love the Donkey Kong games? And I think they're a lot of fun to use. There's also moving platforms that act as launchers, and they're a lot better implemented than the ones I had in the original game. They're pretty fun to use to launch the player super high in the air. I think the set of mechanics I implemented for this game combined to make a lot of fun and satisfying platforming. They're all pretty well implemented, and the only thing I wish I would have implemented is input buffering. I'd give the mechanics in the sequel a B+ grade, as I think they're substantially better than they were in the original game. Now let's examine how I did with the game design in the 2 games. The design of the original game is super linear. There are no hidden collectibles to encourage exploration, or to give some extra challenge to players who'd want that. There is 1 gem that's off the beaten path, but you don't actually need to collect it, so I'm not sure I should really count that towards the grade for this game. The game has a pretty reasonable difficulty curve, with some fairly challenging end stages, which I think is nice. You also unlock the double jump and dash over time, which made the game a bit more interesting as you go through the levels. I think the game design in the original is pretty basic for a platformer, and I'd give it a D+ grade. The design in the sequel game is a lot more interesting thanks to a few things. I added optional collectibles to every level, so in some rooms it's worth it to explore around a bit, and others you need to speedrun through the levels to be able to get the collectible. There's a lot more mechanics in the sequel, so there's a bit of variety to the levels. Some are focused on pretty standard platforming, with the rolling and dashing. Some focus on the falling tile set mechanics, where players are essentially on a timer to make it through the level to be able to progress. And some focus more on the barrels to shoot the panda around the level. I think the depth of mechanics added a good amount of variety to the game design, and kept things relatively fresh through the game. I don't think I did a great job with the difficulty in the sequel. I like difficult platformers, and difficult games in general. But I sometimes forget that not everyone has played a ton of precision platformers before, so I got a bit carried away with the difficulty in this game. It starts out at maybe a medium-ish difficulty, and trends towards pretty difficult as time goes on. I didn't make anything absolutely insane or anything, but for a casual player it's probably way too hard in general. We're gonna go with a B- rating for the game design for the sequel. The final thing to grade myself on is the programming, so let's get to it. The code is pretty rough in the original game. There's a few bugs, like the player being able to use the down attack on walls to essentially fly up walls, and it's possible for the character sprite to get flipped the wrong way, which looks super jank. Architecture-wise, the game is super basic. The player script is just one big script for controlling everything from movement to animations. There's no components for anything, so things like hitboxes and health are duplicating code all through the different enemies in the game. There's also no loading screen, so when going between levels and respawning after dying, the game immediately flashes to a new spot and it's crazy jarring to see. The code is pretty rough in the original game, and I'd give it a D grade. The code in the Pandemonium sequel is quite a bit better architected. The character uses a state machine for the movement, and I can't stress how much of a nightmare it would have been to achieve this level of movement depth if I wasn't using a state machine. I mean, just look at this huge state machine file. There's a lot of different states the character can be in, and specific things that need to take place when entering and exiting states, like starting different timers, and triggering effects, or handling movement differently. I also used hitbox and hurtbox components to avoid duplicating code between the different enemies, as well as a death component that handles spawning the enemy sprite and tumbling it off screen when it gets killed. One minor thing that I like a lot more in the code for the sequel is that the panda stops climbing at the top of a rope, versus in the original, if you held up on a rope, the panda would climb off the top of the rope and then start climbing it again as it fell down. This made the rope climbing a bit less janky, and it's kind of fun to focus on polishing little things in games like this to make it feel like a better experience for players. The game also keeps track of collectibles, deaths, and has a timer running, which I think showing the player at the end of the game is pretty satisfying, and makes the game feel more complete. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the programming in the sequel. I definitely spent a lot of time on the movement and the barrels and stuff for this game. I'd give the game an A- on programming. So that's how I graded the different games, but what did players think of the two games? Well, who doesn't love some nice numbers to look at? So I made this spreadsheet that shows the ratings of the two games, to see how they stack up against each other. I think this really shows that the sequel is better in every way than the original game. Every single category got a higher rating in the sequel, and the two I care about most, fun and gameplay, ranked really high percentile-wise. I got pretty close to a 4-star average rating between players. I'm a little bummed at how the visuals ranked in the new one. While it is higher than I received before, it's still not great, and I think that's partially because there are no environment art pieces. There's just the tile sets, background, enemy, character sprites, but the world is pretty empty. I scored pretty low on theme and innovation as well. The theme I don't really care about too much. I basically ignored the theme in both jams, and just made a platformer because I wanted to, so it's to be expected that I'd score low. For innovation, it seems like people score any platformer relatively low on innovation, which I kinda get as platformers are a really old genre that's been pretty well explored, but I do think some of the mechanics I mixed from different games led to an interesting platforming experience. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how the new game rated, and I think it does show that I've made progress in all aspects of game making over the last year. And we can take a look at the comments between the two games as well, to see what people liked and didn't like about the two games. In the original, people liked the cute art style, and were pretty shocked at how difficult the game was given its cute art. They weren't super positive on the character movement, and a lot of people complained about the controls. I used Z for jump, X for attack, and C for dash. They said the scene changes were jarring, as there were no doors and no camera limits, so it kinda looks like you're just gonna fall off the world as you approach the invisible doors between levels, and some people thought the link to the theme of the jam, what's behind the door, was a bit loose. The comments on the second game were overall pretty positive. I got a lot of compliments on how tight the controls were, while some people said the controls weren't tight enough, which led me to realize I don't really know what people mean when they say the controls aren't tight enough, but I knew the player controller wasn't perfect, so I was expecting some people to not love it. Some people liked the difficulty, and some people even went out of their way to get all the golden bamboos, which adds quite a bit more difficulty to the game. A lot of people found the falling platforms disorienting, because there's nothing static in the background for sections of them to anchor the world, showing that the platform is falling. Overall, the reviews were pretty positive, and I'm really happy with what people had to say about the game. So what do you think? Does it look like I've made progress over the last year? Both games suck? Should I give up on my game development dreams? Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you liked the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and it means so much to me. Follow me on Twitch if you want to hang out and see me make these games, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next video.